I know we're discussing foreign arms sales right now, but I'd like to discuss the arms that are finding their way from Iran into the Houthis' hands in Yemen. Of course, we have a real interest. Our partners and allies have an interest in ensuring that key weapons and technology do not continue to flow there in a manner that further destabilizes the country and perpetuates the civil war. It's been reported that the recent attack on the Mercer Street tanker in the Gulf of Oman originated from Yemen with Iranian-produced drones. Can you confirm those public reports?
Thank you very much for that question, Senator. Yes, I can confirm the reports, and a few comments if you would allow me to. First of all, last Friday, U.S. Central Command released its assessment based on the exploitation of the wreckage and what we were able to recover from the Mercer Street. And what U.S. Central Command did in cooperation with the Office of the Secretary of Defense, the Joint Staff, and NAVCENT is look at the different components that we recovered, compare them to other known Iranian-supported UAVs that we have exploited, and were able to match and see similarities, which is why CENTCOM was able to conclude and put out its press release that, yes, this was an Iran-backed one-way drone attack on the Mercer Street. And secondly, in addition to that DoD's investigation, there was also a multilateral G7 statement where we worked diplomacy first to work with the members of the G7 to put out a statement condemning Iran for the one-way attack UAV on the Mercer Street.
Okay, is there any? That's incredibly helpful and answered some of my next question, which is whether you can shed some light on how you determine, by working with partners in the region, how you might interdict the trafficking of arms out of Iran into the hands of the Houthis or other militant groups.
Absolutely. You've seen the administration do some of this. A good example is a few months ago, there was the interdiction of the Monterey ship, which also was carrying a lot of weapons, which we assessed were Iranian supplied for the Houthis. We have seen, let me take a step back. What we see across the region is Iranian arming, training, and funding of terrorist groups, non-state actors, and militias across the region, all of which aim to undermine the governments and the partners that we want to work with, terrorize civilians, and prevent them from achieving stability. In the Yemen context, we have seen more attacks from the Houthis launched at Saudi Arabia in the first half of this year than we have for several prior years. Iran is increasing the lethality and complexity of both the equipment and the knowledge it transfers to the Houthis so that they can attack Saudi territory, Saudi civilians, and there's also a very sizable U.S. population in Saudi Arabia that is under risk because of the Iran-backed Houthi attacks. U.S. forces are experiencing the Iran-backed UAV network and the force protection issues we are experiencing in Iraq, and even Israel has publicly spoken about the drones from Iran that it has downed in defense of its own territory. This is a regional-wide threat. All of our partners are concerned about it, and this is actually where security cooperation programs can be very effective.
Thank you. I look forward to continued vigilance on that front, and I get the sense that that's a real point of emphasis, so that's great. During the recent attacks from Hamas, Israel used the Iron Dome rocket defense system to defend itself and save countless lives from indiscriminate rocket fire. President Biden has committed to resupplying Israel with the Iron Dome interceptors that were expended over the course of that fighting. Despite the legitimate security needs, more than a dozen Democratic members of Congress sought to block such a resupply and even introduced a resolution in both chambers to do so, to block this resupply. This resupply is crucial. So, Ms. Stroll, what's the status of the administration's efforts to fulfill the president's commitment and assist Israel's resupply of the Iron Dome?
Thank you so much for that question. President Biden was clear in his statement of support for replenishing the Iron Dome defense system. Secretary Austin, also in testimony before the Senate Armed Services Committee, affirmed his support for replenishing and expanding the Iron Dome defense system. We agree with your assessment that it was notably effective in responding to the attacks from Gaza.
I'm sorry, my time's
Saved
over.
lives.
What's the status of it?
We have unequivocally stated our support for emergency or for supplemental appropriations in support of replenishing and expanding the system. We have consulted extensively with Congress and provided information, paperwork to you all to support how you choose to proceed in funding the request.
So you need a supplemental emergency appropriations. That's the only route to achieve that objective. Is that accurate?
Yes, the missile defense funding that we provide to Israel, $500 million a year in an MOU. What Israel assesses it needs is beyond that $500 million a year. We support their request for supplemental appropriations and have provided information to Congress in support of that request.
Thank you.